recording. All right, so today we're going to finish chapter 10. Don't forget the quiz will be open at 4 p.m. and it'll close Monday at midnight, not Sunday anymore. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And we last left off on the Jonestown, they call it the Jonestown Massacre, but not really.
Jared, since you know, I just got a thing on my that flashed across my screen is that my internet is inconsistent.
Okay. Okay, just do what you can. Okay, I'm recording this, so if you. Okay. All right, buddy. So now we're going to start with, we're going to continue with conformity. And conformity is nothing more than doing what others are doing. And we do what others are doing for one of two reasons. One, we see the other people as a source of information, or two, and that's called informational social influence. And the second reason is we use them or we'll do what they're doing just to fit in. And that's called normative social influence. So Solomon Asch came up with this conformity experiment. And what he had done is he had put a bunch of people in a room and he told them all, listen, I'm going to bring in another person and I'm going to ask you to intentionally select the wrong answer. And so the task here is you get a comparison or a test line, and I want you to intentionally pick B or C. Okay. And I want you, whoever starts, I want everyone else to follow along with what they've chosen. Okay. Meanwhile, the person that comes in is not going to be in on the experiment. And when they are sitting in the room, they are thinking, okay, look, we're all a part of this together. Or that person's thinking, no, we're all doing the same thing. Okay. So the person clearly knows in this example that the test line or the comparison line is A. Like that's obvious, right? It's clear. Okay. But everybody in the room is picking C. So they wanted to know, will the person who's not in on the experiment go with the group? And what they found was that 4 out of 5 people, or 80%, went along with the group. So it was a need to maintain, I guess in this case, it was normative social influence, but it was, they were conforming to essentially feel normal, to be a part of the group. And of course, we know that conformity can have both positive and negative consequences. So we'll start with the negative, right? So there's something called groupthink. Now, groupthink sounds good. The term itself sounds good. But what it really is when we make decisions in a group and what we decide as a group, what solution we opt for isn't dependent on the quality of the decision or the solution. It's more dependent on group cohesiveness or group connectiveness, right? So people will they'll go along with other members in a group. They'll go along with them to solve a problem, to develop a solution, even though they know it's not the best idea. Okay. Now, that will be a problem because when you're in a group trying to solve a problem, you want to have the best solution possible, right? So what they're doing is the members in the group themselves are more focused on, again, group cohesiveness and unanimity or solidarity, or we are all unanimous. We are all together. We are all in on this decision. Okay. So how do we know? What are some symptoms of groupthink? Illusions of invulnerability, right? They think that they are, as a group, as long as we're going along with the group, it's going to be, even though we don't think ourselves is the best idea, we think it's going to work. Okay. Self-censorship. People in a group, when they think, man, I don't think that's really the best idea. I don't know if that's how we really solve this problem. Right. So for example, let's say it's race relations and there's a group of legislators or whatever, government officials. And one of them says, well, why don't we separate them? Then everybody will get along. We'll put all black people in this town and all white people in this town. Everybody's like, yeah, let's do that. And you sit there, you're like, that's not right. That's actually terrible. That's a worse idea. In fact, that's what's leading to this problem. But because if you want to be such a strong member of the group, or if you want to be considered, one of the people, one of the guys, or one of the girls, or one of the gals, or one of the fellas, or whatever you folks, if you want to be one of them, you're going to go along with it. So you're going to censor yourself. You're going to not say anything at all. And let's say you did. Let's say you're like, whoa, whoa, everybody, that's a terrible idea. Just so you know, that's how we got ourselves in this mess in the first place. And everybody in the group, here's another symptom, will go, hey, 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 just go along with it. Just go along with it. Okay. Now, because of self-censorship, because of the keeping quiet, right? Keeping it to yourself, there's this illusion that we're all unanimous. Well, nobody dissented, so we're all in agreement. So at various points in our lives, we will be asked to lead for whatever. Maybe you're the president for the hockey club, or maybe you're a coach of some kind, or maybe you are a team leader at your job, or maybe you're something, right? Okay. So, as a leader of a group, if you are the leader, you want to avoid groupthink. You want the best decisions made to solve the problem, right? So, how can you help avoid groupthink? If you reward expressions of doubt and dissent. If someone says, I don't know, I don't think that's a good idea. And if you're a leader, you go, that's great. I'm glad you spoke up. Okay, let's discuss that. Okay. Now, if nobody's saying anything, right, then you go, does anybody have a different view? Does anybody have any different view, right? Because here we are, we're let's say we're coaching softball, right? And you're like, okay, so we should practice on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at let's say 3 p.m., which is a terrible idea because everybody has a job, right? So then you go, does anybody have a different view, a different opinion, a different set of dates, right? You're seeking, right? You're encouraging it. Alternate solutions to problems are solicited. Open mindedness and independent thinking are fostered, right? Let's keep an open mind. If someone says, I don't agree, let's keep an open mind and see if they can convince us, if they can influence us to see it from their perspective. And we're encouraged to identify with a collective goal that benefits the group, not an individual, not just a few, not or not just the majority. The wisdom and madness of crowds. Let's say the college was open and you're driving the college to go to class, right? And you're going up the hill and you're coming up around the bend, and it's just as you come around the bend, a whole bunch of people are yelling, right? They're screaming, running down. You're going to use them running and screaming. It's clear. You don't know what's happening, but it's clear they're running from something, right? So you're going to go, well, not today. You're going to back up and go back home. You're like, this is not a good spot for me today, right? So there's some wisdom, but now we have the madness. So that mob mentality as a result of what's called de-individuation. So we have something happens when we are in a group, even when it's something simple like someone falls down and needs help. We are more likely to receive help the fewer people, the fewer bystanders there are. So it's called the bystander effect or bystander apathy. So back in the, I don't know, the 50s, there was this woman who was walking home in Manhattan. I believe it was Manhattan, some one of the boroughs. And as she was walking home, she was attacked by a man and stabbed, and she's screaming. Now she's standing between two large apartment complexes, and so there are all these windows in this alleyway, and all these people run to their windows and look down and see this man attacking this woman, right? And finally, someone says, "Hey, stop stabbing her!" Right? Everybody from the different buildings were looking out from their windows and seeing people across the alleyway who also were witnessing. Not one person, and I think there were like 30 bystanders, there were 30 people who witnessed this. Not one person called the cops. Not one. Because everybody else was seeing other people on the other side and then on this side, and they thought, well, someone else will call the cops. Okay. So their personal responsibility to help the other diffused, it spread out. Okay, because they assumed that someone else would do it. You know what happened to this woman? Because nobody called the cops. The
She
guy ran
died.
away, doubled back. She got into some sort of one of the buildings, what do you call that? Whatever, the entryway for the building. She got into the building. The guy followed her and killed her, finished her off.
Yep.
So the mob mentality, what happens in like rioting and looting and all this destruction and stuff, when people do these things, often they think that they can't be identified, right? They think that in a crowd full of people, no one's going to recognize me. I see them all taking toilet paper and food and TVs or whatever they're doing, right? So I'm going to do it too. How are they going to catch just me, right? That's de-individuation. You lose your own individuality. You lose a sense, essentially, a sense of self or self-awareness. So altruism is helping behavior. It's a fancy word for helping or pro-social behavior, right? But it could come at a cost to you. So how do we avoid the bystander effect? You just did. By learning that the bystander effect exists, by learning that, by knowing that if you don't help, it has been shown in research, in studies, because they followed up on this whole. Her name was that was killed. The woman's name was Kitty Genovese, Kitty Genovese or Kitty Genovese. So they conducted this study where they had people, actors, falling down in the presence of other people. Now, they would have other people who were also actors act like they were just innocent bystanders who were nearby, but they'd fall down in front of a random person also. Now, what they were doing is they wanted to know what would that random person do, dependent on whether or not there were two other people, or three other people, or five other people. And the more people that were there, the less likely that one person who was not in on the experiment, the less likely that person was going to help them. So, what can you do, right? What are the steps that need to be taken in overcoming the bystander effect, right? First, you have to notice that there's a need for it. You have to recognize this is a dangerous situation. We must do something. The second thing is, if our culture doesn't um, value pro-social behavior, or if there's something about our culture that says mind your business, then you're not going to do it, right? So if you do notice there's a need for help and your culture does embrace pro-social behavior, and also if you have an ally, if you have a friend, you're more likely to help, because what you're going to do is, that you're being judged by your friend at the same time. Your friend knows that you're judging them, like, well, we know it's right to help people, but why are we not helping people? Okay. And then the last one is, if you're entrapped, if someone actually calls you out in a group, you're more likely to help, right? So what should you know as the person who's being accosted, as the person who's being, or the person who's hurt, who's fallen down and maybe twisted their ankle and they need help getting somewhere or getting help, right? If you are that person who fell down, you have to actually look at somebody, point to them and say, would you please get me help? Because to expect people to help you in a large group, they're not going to. They're going to all assume someone else will. Okay. Now we have our ethnic identity, right? A person's identification with a racial or ethnic group. Okay. So I would say, for years, my ethnic identity was, I always identified myself simply as a white American. Um, but I also knew that my ancestors were natives and Italian. So for some reason, I was kind of proud of the Italian part and the Native American thing. Um, but more so the Italian, because I think I just liked the food or something. I don't know. I don't. There's something I liked about being Italian, even though I don't look Italian. But whatever. So we have different, ethnic identities, different backgrounds. Oh, I'm Irish, or I come from Irish people, or whatever, or I come from African descent, or whatever, right? Okay. Acculturation is the process where people of minority groups become to identify and feel a part of the mainstream culture. So you have a lot of people who will immigrate to the United States, and after a few years, in the beginning, let's say you're from some Asian, uh, 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 like a Korean or a Japanese or a Chinese, where it's collectivistic and it's very interdependent, uh, right? So they define themselves in kind of a group membership. They'll keep to themselves often. They'll be like, we're not gonna, that's too American for us. But over time, they start to kind of assimilate. They start to adopt some of the mainstream cultural practices. Like, oh, look at, this year we're gonna go trick or treating. Where in the beginning they didn't. Ethnocentrism, the belief that one's own ethnic group, nation, or religion is superior to all others. That's obviously bad. Now, someone asked, where did racism come from? I don't know if it was this class, another class, I don't know, one of the classes. And really, this is where it came from. Our ancestors, a long, 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 thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, depended, their survival depended on recognizing different mm, tribes by something as simple as height. They go, whoa, we are all short and you are very tall. Now, that tall individual threatened this tribe or tall individuals because at that time they were going to come and pillage. They were going to come and take all their resources or kill them or eat them or whatever it is that they, because that's how people survived back then. So it did a long, 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 long time ago. It did aid our survival by making people feel attached to their own group and willing to work on the group's behalf in their own survival, not just in an aggressive, like, this is my territory, but also, you are my people, right? Um, Heck, religions do this, right? It's like that. Oh, you're a Catholic, I'm a Catholic, praise Jesus or whatever. Let's go to the Catholic bingo night or something. I don't. So I've said this before. I don't know if I've said in this class. I get confused, but how do we get rid of the isms, the ageism, the sexism, the racism? It's simple. We have to give people an opportunity to work together toward a common goal. And so this is a beautiful experiment where they took a bunch of boys who were in a summer camp and divided them at random into two groups, the Rattlers and the Eagles. They said, you are now the Rattlers. Let's say it's like 15 boys. And these are like, 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds. And then you are the Eagles, these 15 boys. Okay, you go to your cabin and you go to your cabin. That's where you, and they had them compete in these competitions. They had them like play against each other. And when the Rattlers would win, they'd be like, yeah, Rattlers, Eagles, stink, right? But then they got like aggressive. They started to like become hostile toward one another. They were experiencing a minor form of ethnocentrism because they identified themselves, this is a summer camp with children, as Rattlers and Eagles or Eagles. Okay. So what they did is they thought, okay, good. I guess good that they're hostile toward one another. They're picking on each other. They're kind of hitting each other and whatever. How do we reverse it? Now we've just simulated essentially racism. We've just simulated that with children. How do we get rid of it? It was so simple. What they did is they had the food truck. Every week, the food truck will go out to the grocery store, pick up a bunch of supplies, bring it back. They had the food truck go out, pick up the supplies, and then they just turned it off about a mile away and said, oh, it broke down. They walked back and said, hey, you guys, if you want your ice cream sandwiches frozen, we need your help pushing this back. And so, because they got to work together toward a common goal, once they got back, they're all high five and yay, Rattlers and Eagles, we work together, we're friends. Just because they worked together toward a common goal. As they're pushing, a Rattler would say something like to an Eagle, so, where are you from? Right? They forgot all about their hostilities. They forgot all about, they wanted those ice cream sandwiches frozen. Does this make sense? I can only see Hammer, really. Does this make sense, Hammer? Just nod yes or no. Okay, thank
Makes
you.
sense to me.
All right, thank you. Okay. So that's great. Now we can do this with children. How do we do it in real life? Man, that is so simple. Just give people opportunities to work in the same places so people can work together, right? So this people are so let me come back on that one. Some people are so against affirmative action. Well, it should go to the best qualified person for the job. Well, if the person meets the qualification, and let's say it's a minority, let's say it's a older Asian woman, right? And then you got a young white man. They're both qualified. The younger white man might have a bachelor's degree in this particular thing, but doesn't mean that bachelor's degree is going to help do the job any better or make it any different. So by having employed the older Asian woman, what you've done is you've given other white people the opportunity to interact with someone, a member of the minority group, and see them as an equal and go, oh, you watch Jeopardy too? Oh, no kidding. Do you also like those Little Debbie snack cakes? Do you like the strawberry rolls? You don't? Okay, I don't really either, but Star Crunch is the worst, right? Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, okay. See, now they start to see people as the same. That's how we get rid of it. That's how we get rid of sexism, ageism, racism. Give people opportunities to work together. Stop separating them. Stereotypes. Summary impressions of a group in which a person believes that all members of the group share a common trait or traits, right? Now, these traits may be positive, they may be negative, they may be neutral, meaning women are nurturing. That's a stereotype. Women are more caring than men. That's a stereotype. Not all women are caring. Um, Men are heroic. They are whatever heroic. Let's say. Okay, that's a stereotype. Not all men are heroic or brave. Okay, a negative stereotype. Women are overly emotional. Well, first of all, they're not. Men are equally emotional. They are as emotional. What women do and what men do is they express it differently. Women verbalize, men aggress physically. That's the only difference. Okay, I mean it's pretty. I mean it's worse for the men what they're doing, but I should say not for men, but it's to physically aggress is worse than verbally aggressing, in my opinion. In my opinion. My opinion. My opinion. But although words we do know. Okay. Anyway, um, so that's a negative stereotype for women, right? They are overly emotional. Negative stereotype for men. They're pigs. They're perverts. Not all men are perverts. Women are perverts too. Some are, right? And then there are neutral stereotypes. All men like sports. So no, yes, some do, some don't.
No,
But no one's going to be offended by that, right? No one cares, right? Oh, women like to, I don't know, they like to use makeup. Okay, who? Nobody cares. Nobody. It's not neutral. I mean, it's not positive. It's not negative.
so do guys nowadays.
Some do. That's right. That's exactly the point behind stereotypes is that there are exceptions for everything, right?
Honestly, some guys are better at it than girls are. I'm just saying.
Yes, some guys are better at it than some women. Yep, they are. And some women are more heroic than some men. And some men are more emotional than some women. And some women like sports and some men don't. And some women it goes on and on, right? We all have these stereotypes, right? So stereotypes can be helpful. They can be because they allow us to make decisions really quick by just something real superficial, right? So an emergency, right? Something happens, you're out in public and you got, let's say you got like a 1 year old, you're babysitting a 1 year old or you got a 1 year old, right? And you have to do something, you have to address something. Something is happening and you have got to leave immediately, attend to that thing, and you cannot bring that 1 year old with you. It's a dangerous situation. Maybe a car's on fire, something like that. But you feel like you can help that person in that car, right? So you can't bring the 1 year old. So you turn to the spectators, and who do you spot? A woman. You're gonna go, lady, miss, man, woman. Would you please watch this 1 year old while I try to save that person's life, right? You're going to automatically use your stereotypes to go, man, no, woman, yes. It's what we do. It's we're all doing it. It distorts our realities, right? It exaggerates differences between groups. Women are emotional. Men are equally emotional. We just express it differently. Or I should say, they express it differently. It produces selective perception. What does that mean? It means that we will pay more attention to when a man says something perverted and ignore all the other times that other men in their lives have not. That's the confirmation bias. It underestimates differences within groups also. Not all men are perverts. Not all women are nurturing. Not all men like sports. Not all women like to wear makeup. You know what I mean? We'll go with yes. Okay. So where does prejudice come from? Well, starts with us. Starts with us. Even if we were not raised in households that were biased against sexes, races, eth- uh, ethnicities, religions, you name it, the Irish or the whatever, right? Even if we are not, there's a psychological component because we need to feel good about ourselves. Anything, anything that resembles us, right? For example, um, let's say you got a favorite sports team. Okay. Let's say it's the Buffalo Bills. Okay. So you're out there in the public, maybe you're grocery shopping, and you notice someone's got a Buffalo Bills hoodie. You're automatically going to like that person more just because they have some similar thing to you. That means that anything, if you're a Bills fan, then you're probably going to look around and go, damn Patriots, I hate the Patriots, right? That is the psychological root to it. Why? It's only because aspects that resemble you are you're going to be drawn to. Why? Because you have to love yourself. So that means that if you love the aspects of yourself and someone else is sharing an aspect of you that's just like you, you're going to like that too. Now, of course, there are social causes. What we learn, what we hear from our friends, from our relatives, okay, in the media, and of course, there are economic causes. What does that mean? It means if I had a nickel for every time I've been hearing this lately about, you know, if if poor people just stopped using, the federal assistance and picked themselves up by the bootstraps and just went to work. Well, I worked hard to get where I am. That is one of the dumbest things. Oh, man, I get so offensive when it comes to this topic. Sorry. That is one of the most ignorant things. It, the people that say those things don't have any clue. They have no clue what led what led people to be disproportionately impoverished. What events led up to that point. And I'm not just talking about particular ages or races or ethnicities or whatever. I'm talking about even them individually. You have no idea. So because you have something and they don't, well, instead of feeling bad about it, instead of experiencing cognitive dissonance, you have to go, well, it's because you don't deserve it. I deserve it. Because
Honestly, like
what if
I was
we
definitely
actually
a
admitted, what
person
if we
before.
actually admitted that we have things that we didn't earn? What if we actually understood that when we go into a store, we are not watched more by management than, say, a young black man? What if we actually acknowledge that? And maybe we would go, oh, crap, we are bad people. Liv, what were you saying, young lady?
My thing was is like before I had this like one teacher who was like very mind opening for myself in particularly. Um I used to be just like a very one-sided person. I would be like, oh my God, you have all these people who are just like abusing all this stuff. And then I like had her class and it just really made me open up my mind and realize, wow, you don't understand the circumstances that happened. You really don't know what's going on in a person's life and
No,
don't be too quick to judge them,
that's right.
Like the other day, my aunt works downtown for the um health department, and we went and got lunch at a restaurant, and there was a guy there, and I just felt so bad. He has like a walker and he's bundled up, and he asked me, he was like, do you have any change? And at that time I was kind of like, no, because I had just put my car on the road. But I was like, actually, hang on a second, because I had remembered like that morning I had taken a whole bunch of change out of my little jar that I have to get a coffee. And I was like, you know what? Hang on. So I went back to my car. I gave him $5 in change, and he was just very appreciative of it.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, I don't know what I'd do in that situation.
Hmm.
If I were that person sitting there with a walker and bundled up, I don't
Hmm.
know what I would do in that situation.
Hmm.
But why is it,
So
Jared? Let me ask you a question, Jared.
Yeah.
Why is it that my first thought would be he's probably asking for that money for something to drink?
Hmm.
Why is that, do you think? What does that say about me?
What it says, your skepticism of their honesty says, everything about not what you've experienced, but about what you've seen. As in, you didn't firsthand experience these things, meaning, for example, the way homeless are depicted in our media as bums looking for money just to go out and drink it or shoot it or smoke it. That's the way our culture has shaped our way of perceiving those individuals. Now, I saw this meme. Yeah, it was a meme, but I loved it. I loved this meme. And it said something like, it was something touching, right? But it was like, his father and this son were out, and then this homeless person came up and asked for money, and the father gave the person, like, I don't know, 20 bucks or something, right? And the son asked the father, why would you give that man 20 bucks? You don't know what he's going to do with it. He looks like he's going to go drink it. And the father said something to the effect of, I don't know that, but I would rather be wrong and have faith that he's going to use it right than be right and then wrong him, essentially. I'd rather be the fool than to be the meanie, essentially. And so that's it, really. I would err on the side of kindness. What are you going to lose? What did Liv lose? $5? But you know what she gained in self perception, what she gained in life experience and compassion and self worth and self value and that real altruistic pro social experience. That's worth way more than $5. Way more. She gained $1 million from that experience. So good for you, Liv. And Bob, we all feel that way. We all think that way, but we all have to act or behave against it. At least I think so. We're about to. What about the poor veterans out here, homeless, starving, while others are out eating lobster and on yacht?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like you said, Tosh, do something about it. You know, do something about it.
Well,
Vote
like
for the
I
right
just
people who
heard,
support veterans. Vote for people who
like
support veterans.
that's kind of what this was brought. People, I was talking to somebody very close to me, and you know, it takes not just one, but it takes a group of people to start making changes.
Yeah,
I mean, not one person can change the world, but together we can.
that's
And
true, but one person can start it.
it would,
I mean,
yes.
think of Martin Luther King Jr. Think of where we are today, and think of where we were before him. One person can make a
I
huge
mean,
difference. Yeah,
I look at Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, and like, do you see how much money he has? Like,
yeah,
you typically don't think of this, but he actually has enough money to either end hunger or homelessness in America.
yeah,
That's a lot of
Yeah.
money.
yeah.
And like, I'm sorry, my coworkers and I talk about this, and we think about it as like, if you were to ever become as rich as that man, how would you like spend your money? Would you just keep it for yourself or would you give it back? And we always say, like, me personally, I just have enough money for myself and my family to get by. And then I'm sorry, I don't want the rest of it. I think it's crazy how selfful like people are, like how they just want to like keep everything for themselves,
Mm-hmm,
because they see it as power. Money is essentially power
mm-hmm.
in the
But
day that
when
we live in.
but when
And it's
you
sad.
die, but when you die, all that money that you saved and just stuffed in your pockets and shit, where does it go? If people would just, how much money do you need, man?
Yeah, yeah. Tasha's saying you won't be remembered by the money you have. You know. No, you guys are all right. You guys are. I like everything that everybody's saying, obviously, because we're all lovers here, right? All right, I'm gonna move on. Okay, sorry to bust up the the bonding. All right. So cultural national causes, we already addressed this one with ethnocentrism. So cultural national causes, we will be bonded to people of our own ethnic or national group and its traditions, right? Okay. Now, how do we measure prejudice? Social distance. The reluctance that people have to get too close to someone who is older, younger, black, white, Asian, Muslim, um, um, male, female, um, you name it, okay? Clown, mime, that kind of thing, right? So we can actually measure prejudice by how close people get to one another. We can measure prejudice by the unequal treatment, such as racial discrimination in the quote war on drugs. The war on drugs was nothing more, really. It didn't do anything. It didn't get anybody but black people, primarily. That's big. It just was a big, giant sentence on black people selling weed, truly, for the great majority of it. So, what people do when they're stressed or angry, right? So, what they yell out when they're stressed or angry, people are more likely to reveal aspects of themselves, whether they're aware of it or not, and say things like, oh, gosh, darn Canadians, whatever. Okay. If you got something against Vermonters or Canadians or French or whomever you got an issue with, people are more likely to exhibit, you know, their prejudicial biases or whatever. Mhm. Brain activity, we can look at parts of the brain, and we see that certain parts of the brain will kind of quiet down when it comes to the reasoning portions. And then lastly, the implicit attitudes that we have, we can measure using something called the implicit association test or the implicit attitude test. And basically what it means is that people they will make less errors when they are matching things that they implicitly believe. Like they'll be given a task to match up words with that are related to success. If they are racially prejudiced, like white people are more will make less mistakes matching white people or faces of white people with successful words like millionaire or homeowner or family something or new car or something. They can quickly match those words together, but when they're asked to match them to black faces, they make more errors and they accidentally put them to the white faces. And that's called an implicit association test. And there are all kinds. There you can measure someone's um, religious prejudices, their sex prejudices, their sexual orientation prejudices, their age prejudices, their you name it, their political party prejudices. You know,
Shit.
be right back, Bob. Just want to see something here. Okay, and that should
No,
be yep. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
So the next slide is
Thanks a
something
lot.
we've already talked about. Are you done? Nope.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so the next slide, again, this is a bit of a review. So we have to give opportunities for people to work together. We have to, formally and informally. We have to have equal legal status. We have to have equal opportunities, equal power, right? We have to provide where it's not happening moral, legal, and economic support, okay? And we have to cooperate. And this is the important thing, because if you do all these things, then what happens is we are already beginning to work toward a common goal. That's how we reduce it, just like they did at that boys' camp. When they were pushing that truck, they had equal status, they had equal opportunities to get those ice cream bars back before they melted. Ice cream sandwiches, ice cream bars, ice cream cakes, bonbons, ice cream things, whatever, something that melts. I don't even know that they use ice cream as an excuse, but it could have been just any refrigerated item. Could have been things that were canned. I don't even care. They all wanted food. All right, we have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I'm going to stop recording. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing. Then I'm going to stop recording.